Welcome back to Le Chat. What a week again. No surprise there. Well, it kind of kicked off. A lot of it kicked off late. To be fair, it was kind of a chill one, relatively speaking. And then the weekend, like all sorts happened. I'll get straight into it. Listen, we started basketball. Started basketball because the NBA playoffs finished round one. A lot of it, like I was saying last week, a lot of it was very straightforward. All those games, like I said, the Bucks swept. I think that was done last time we spoke. The Nets finished off the Celtics in 5. Again, pretty straightforward. James Harden got injured though. Basically their best player, second best player. So that could be interesting if they go, well, as they should, if they go deep into the playoffs, they're down one of their superstars. So that's going to be very interesting. All these injuries late on, the injuries to these superstars in these meaningless games that they're going to win anyway. That's the difference between winning and losing for sure. That's what cost LeBron and the Lakers. Obviously, Anthony Davis got injured. He rushed back to try and get into that game 6, and they lost it anyway. LeBron's out. He's out in 6 to the Phoenix Suns, who do look pretty good. The Atlanta Hawks. It looked like it was going to be a back and forth series with the Knicks, but Trae Young, who's a young superstar, he just took the series over, and I think he's starting to thrive on this kind of villain sort of role, which is all power to him. He's a small dude. He's obviously young. He's not very big, but obviously he's got a big sort of character, and he's clearly a player for the big occasions. He went into New York and beat them 3 times in their own building. So listen, that Atlanta Hawks were very impressive in round 1. The Denver Nuggets and the Denver Nuggets and Portland Trailblazers had an all-time classic in game 5. Damian Lillard scored, I think, 50 points. Had just shooting from everywhere, scoring from everywhere, logo shots, 3-pointers everywhere, and they still lost in double overtime. So I think that was kind of the last chance saloon for them, because they went on and lost the 6th game as well. Then we had the Utah Jazz. Obviously, they won their game in 5. They won their series in 5. And then just Sunday, we had the Clippers and Dallas Mavericks game 7 in LA. And despite Luka Doncic scoring another, I think it was 30 or 40 points, Kawhi and Paul George are too much for them. So Dallas is going home. Luka Doncic is going to sign a $200 million Supermax contract, $200 million, 5 years, which he earns. Obviously, he's by far the best player on their team. He's one of the best players in the NBA, full stop. But he can't win it by himself. Clearly, there's a lot of teams. You just need more than one guy. If you have one guy on your team, you can do well, but you need 2, and all the best teams have at least 2. So Luka Doncic didn't have enough, obviously. So the semi-finals, we've got the Nets and the Bucks in the East. That's going to be a good series. The Nets won the first game without James Harden, so he got injured. Blake Griffin stepped up and did a bit there. So the Bucks are down 1. Again, the Nets are the favourite. For me, I think they're favourites bookies-wise as well, but I think the Nets are definitely looking like they're going to sweep through. I don't know if they'll sweep the Bucks, but it definitely won't go more than 5 or 6, I don't think, because they're just too good. But if James Harden is injured, could be an interesting series. If Giannis, the 2-time MVP, gets his act together, they could push that one quite deep. Speaking of Trae Young and the Hawks, they went and beat. They were up 20 for most of the game yesterday against the Sixers, the number 1 ranked in their conference, 76ers. So Joel Embiid tore his meniscus in the previous game, but he was good to go. Scored another 40 points. Savage player. But yeah, the Trae Young and the Hawks were up 20 points for most of the game, and then right at the very end, because it was obviously in Philadelphia, the home crowd were getting behind the 76ers, and then they started clawing back, and then the Hawks started making a load of mistakes, and they got it down to, I think, 2 points right at the end, 30 seconds to go. The Hawks get given the ball away. 76ers scored a few, but then the Hawks and Trae Young specifically, some big scores late in the stretch, and they take game one away. So obviously now it's an even playing field. Both teams get 3 games at home from here. So Atlanta could be that. They could really steal it. They could really sneak in there, because a lot of people thought the Knicks would beat the Hawks, and now Trae Young and the Hawks are, they've won 5 out of the last 6 games now in the playoffs. So, 76 in a bit of trouble. The West is going to start tonight. Utah Jazz and the Clippers. That could definitely go 7 games, depending on how, because the Jazz have had a lot of rest now, and the Clippers obviously had to go 7 games against Dallas. So that could definitely play a factor. And then the Nuggets and the Suns, again. As it has been this whole playoffs, the West playoffs is competitive. Both of those series are going to be good, and obviously, all 4 series are going to be good at this point. You've got the semi-finals, they're the 8 best teams in the NBA, in terms of who's progressed. So all of the series are going to be good, but the West is going to be very close. Wouldn't want to predict who's going to win any of those, but certainly if everyone's healthy, the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the best team. They're going to be the team to beat, and I guess we'll see who comes out of the West. So that's basketball is rumbling on. We should have, I think, a couple of games this week in each of the series. So I don't think it'll be over. I wouldn't expect any of them to be a sweep. So I think we'll still be talking round 2 next week. Azerbaijan Grand Prix. This season, a lot of these seasons that I've watched, the last however many years, 10, 15 years, this one seems to be just going back and forth, and there's so many momentum changes in the race, pre-race, and the favourite doesn't finish, and it all seems to be just going, just when you think it's going one way, it just turns completely the other way. Azerbaijan historically have always been good races, just because it's a street circuit, but there's a massive 2 kilometre straight at the end of the circuit. So you've got a street circuit similar to Monaco, but a lot wider. Well, a lot wider to be fair. Some very, very twisty sections, but then that massive high speed 2 kilometre straight at the end kind of just levels out everything. So if you've got a car that can go through twisty turns like the Red Bull, you're going to pull ahead in the middle sector, and then you've got a long straight. Whereas if you're in front, the toe behind the car is worth half a second apparently. Let alone if you've got DRS, which is the rear wing opening, you get even more speed. So following is easier in this track, as it proved. Practice and qualifying looked like Mercedes weren't even going to. Well, there was kind of rumblings that Mercedes weren't even going to get into Q3, so the final round of qualifying, the top 10. But they got there. They used the toe. So Valtteri Bottas basically sacrificed himself, or was told to sacrifice himself, to get Hamilton a faster time. Hamilton ended up second. Leclerc in Ferrari has managed back-to-back poles now. This time he actually started the race, because obviously last week or 2 weeks ago in Monaco he crashed into the wall, didn't even get to start the race. Verstappen was third. So going into the race, you're thinking Ferrari probably haven't got the pace to hang on, and it's going to be Hamilton v Verstappen again. And that turned out to be true. Leclerc did actually manage to keep away, but lap 2, Hamilton went past him. I think lap 5, Verstappen went past him. And then Hamilton kind of just managed the gap. He kind of kept Leclerc in range of him so that he could keep out of range of Verstappen. So it's quite clever for a little while. And then Verstappen was like, nope, see you later, I'm off. Cleared past Leclerc and kind of kept in touch with Hamilton. Hamilton was doing okay. And then they pitted, and Hamilton pitted, and Gasly, again, pitted behind him, but you have to let the cars go down the pit lane. So Hamilton goes into his pit box, which is at the very, very front. So Gasly follows him in, and obviously because he's going past Hamilton's pit box, Hamilton can't go off and do his thing, so he has to wait. So he got delayed by about 2 seconds, which let Perez, who'd already made up 2 spots, jump past Hamilton. And then Perez's stop in turn was then slow, but so Perez came out just in front of Hamilton. So Verstappen's managed to clear off into the distance, not clear off, but a couple of seconds down the way. And the Red Bull was just so quick in that middle sector. Hamilton and the Mercedes, well, Hamilton was quick in a straight line and was able to follow, but he was really struggling. So that kind of panned out. That was kind of meandering along. The race was sort of pretty settled. Hamilton was really struggling in third, couldn't overtake Perez, and then Verstappen was out in front. Then, first of the big flashpoints, Lance Stroll was going down the 2 kilometre straight. His rear tyre blows up. He spins out, hits the wall, and it causes a safety car while they clear all the damage up. So everyone kind of slows down, does their little thing. And then after the safety car restart, everyone clears off again, and it kind of falls into the same sort of pattern as it was before. So Verstappen gets a good jump out in front. He's out of the way. Then you had Perez, Hamilton, and then Sebastian Vettel made up a few places. And then generally everyone was kind of like following that kind of pattern, and it was looking just like a slam dunk, as you were 1, 2, 3, Verstappen, Perez, Hamilton. And then Verstappen's tyre blows up down this kilometre straight, 3 laps from the end. He's 8 seconds down the road, just cruising through this race. And then the same spot, the same tyre, and the same part of the track as Stroll blew his tyre up. Verstappen blows his tyre, spins, hits the wall. Perez is now in the lead. Hamilton's second. I think Vettel was then third. So then they red flag the race, which means they had to stop the race. Everyone goes into the pit lane. Obviously, they get to change their tyres and do all that kind of thing while they clear the road up. So at this point, you've got 2 laps to go. You've got Perez in front, Hamilton second, Vettel third. Vettel gets fresh new tyres. He's the only one with fresh soft tyres, the quickest tyre, and he's obviously made up a lot of space, a lot of places in the actual race itself. So he was looking good. Hamilton was struggling all race, to be fair, to keep up with Perez, and Perez was out in front, no problems from what we were aware of. So they follow around again. They line up on the grid in the positions they were. Light goes out. Hamilton's brakes are smoking very badly because they've obviously overheated by sitting in the pit lane for too long. Then they're sitting on the grid, steaming. Lights go out. Hamilton launches off the line and he's already in front of Perez. And then they get to the corner and it's a sharp left. Obviously from the TV pictures, he just locks his tyres, smoke come out, and he goes straight on down the escape road. Perez clears off, Vettel clears off, and Gasly, who was 5th or 6th for most of the race, he's now 3rd. So Hamilton's out with only 2 laps to go. He's at the back of the field. Perez gets to the end, wins the race, pulls over on the very next corner because his car was about to break down. His car, if they had one more lap, his car would have broken down. So imagine the scene if you had Verstappen blow his tyre, Hamilton didn't turn his, I'll tell you what he did in a minute, but Hamilton went off, and then imagine they had another lap and Perez would have broken down. You've had Vettel winning the race started 11th. He qualified 11th in the race. Managed to jump a few people at the beginning, made some really good overtakes, stayed out long on his tyres, and then just crept up and up and up. I mean, he's a 4-time world champion. He's, one of the greatest of all time. People must have forgot. But obviously the Aston Martin's been struggling all year because of the same problems that Mercedes had in terms of the rake of their car and the downforce rules that the Formula One have introduced, which meant that some of the cars that introduced that had a higher rake than their car, so the Mercedes and the Aston Martin got penalised more heavily in terms of the changes. So they've been struggling, but listen, he managed to get 2nd. Listen, crazy race. I mean, if you told me, it's funny because at one point, obviously, Verstappen's clearing off. He's going to win the race. He's going to get 26 points. Hamilton's going to get 3rd, which would be 15 points. So at one point, by pace and by fair racing or whatever you want to call it, Hamilton should have left Baku 15 points behind Verstappen. Given that I haven't mentioned Bottas, so Bottas he qualified 10th, because he kind of sacrificed his qualifying to give Hamilton a tow. Obviously, he could have done a better lap time, but he kind of screwed his own lap time. Qualified 10th and just stayed 10th the whole race. Didn't come through the field, just stayed 10th, 9th, 10th, pitted, and then just got overtaken after some of these red flags. And he was absolutely nowhere. So he got no points, and Hamilton got no points. So it depends on how you want to look at it. Obviously, if you're Verstappen, you've lost a race win, 26 points for your team and for your own title because, you lost 26 points, and then I guess you should have left with a 15-point lead in the World Championship. So given that his tyre got cut, which happens, I mean, it's bad luck, but it just happens. He's not been robbed. His car blew up. His tyre blew up. They haven't actually told us why. They thought it was a tyre. The structure of the tyre was too weak, because it's the same one that's happened to Lance Stroll. But they're starting to think it's Pirelli, the tyre manufacturer, starting to think it's debris, which makes more sense because the tyre compounds. They found a tear in Lewis Hamilton's tyre as well. So I'm thinking it's probably debris, which I guess is just part of the game. Valtteri Bottas had loads of those recently. So I guess from Verstappen's point of view, you've lost a race win that you were cruising, that, through no real fault of your own, you've lost 26 points. So then to have Hamilton forget, so this is what I was going to tell you, Hamilton to forget to turn off something that's called the brake magic. So when you're behind a safety car, you need to keep the brake temperature up. So there's a button, literally a button on the steering wheel that you engage to heat the brakes, to keep the tyres and the brakes in good working temperature window. So he had it on, obviously, behind the safety car, and he forgot to turn it off. No, I think he turned it off, and then when the race started and Perez came over, Perez kind of dived over to try and block him. Either Hamilton flicked it by accident, or he nudged it, or whatever, so that all the brake balance went to the front of the car. And obviously, if you want to turn the car, you want to have the brake balance in the right place. So it's went completely to the wrong place, and he's basically got a car that can't stop. So he's basically got no brakes. So it's a mistake. I think they'll talk about it more. I think because Mercedes normally bring out something on a Wednesday, which is great. I mean, it's great for that they do it. They bring out something on a Wednesday that they normally explain how the race went and what happened. So by Wednesday, we'll know exactly what happened, why he did it, and who did it, and if it's an accident or a mistake. But it's kind of the way the momentum and the pendulum swings. It's again from Verstappen's point of view, you had an easy race win. You should have left with 15 points, the 15-point lead in the championship. You've actually left with 4. So technically, Verstappen's lost out quite big, because 15 points is a good old gap. That's two first, second finishes. So once you start building them up, they really do add up. But from Hamilton's point of view, given that he was racing poorly, it's kind of like when you're in football. If you play badly and win, or play badly and draw, it's really, really good, because when you play well, you can obviously think about winning more. So if you kind of get away with one and you've managed to win or increase, then that's always what you really want to do, obviously. But Hamilton had a terrible, terrible race. I mean, terrible by his standards, really. I mean, he was never going to come any lower than third, but he just couldn't get close to the Red Bulls through the middle twisty section, and just didn't have enough pace. So from his point of view, he should have lost. He should have had a 15-point gap, and now he doesn't. Now, whether or not, I mean, he did lose because he would have won the race. So he obviously passed Perez, and may or may not have got the fastest lap of the race on that particular lap. So he's potentially lost 26 points, I suppose. So he could have a, quick maths, 22-point lead, which, it's kind of a weird one, because obviously Verstappen should have won the race, so he should have had a 15-point lead. And Hamilton, just by staying in the race, and just if he didn't make a silly mistake, he should then have had a 22-point lead. So it's kind of 6 of 1. It doesn't really, you can worry about the kind of the what ifs. But I think at the end of the day, neither of them can have any complaints. especially Hamilton, because Hamilton should have lost the race anyway. Hamilton shouldn't have gained anything anyway, but he's kind of gained 11 points because Verstappen should have been 15 points ahead. So that's kind of the way I see it. And obviously Red Bull now, because Perez won the race, have got a good little gap in the constructors. So the next couple of races are going to be interesting. They go back to normal tracks. There's no more street circuits because Singapore's been cancelled later on in the year. That's a street circuit. So when we go to normal tracks, Mercedes are better, as they showed in Spain, and even some of the other tracks where they're kind of better but didn't quite get it done. So the street circuits have never been good for Mercedes. That's never been the case. Red Bull have always been good at street circuits. They've never been good at Baku, specifically, probably because of that straight. But clearly, going forward, it's going to be very interesting. And Hamilton's got away with one for sure. Again, it's twice this year he's got away with one. And Verstappen has dominated again a race. He's made it look very easy. He's got out in front. He's in the best car. He's probably driving the best at the minute. And Mercedes making a lot of mistakes, which is unusual for them. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how things go in France in a couple of weeks. And then we've got a doubleheader in Austria, which Hamilton is very good at in Austria. So we'll see. Listen, as advertised, still runs. It's very, very entertaining. So flipping it over to French Open tennis. So obviously last week we had Osaka jumping out, withdrawing. And the first round games all kind of ticking over. Federer is kind of a change in the guard. So Federer won. He's 39 now. Roger Federer won his game. It's like a grueling 3 or 4 hour game late into the night. And he then withdrew because he's come back from double knee surgery, and he wants to try and win Wimbledon, which he's obviously better at. That's a surface he's better at. So at 39, it makes sense to withdraw and kind of think, pick your battles for another day. Serena Williams lost in straight sets. She has now lost six out of the last 8 finals. Well, she didn't get to the final this time, but she lost 6 out of the last 8, and she's trying. She's got one more Grand Slam title to get to tie the record. So she's kind of running out of chances here, because I think the standard of women's tennis is obviously getting very high, and she's not as dominant as she was. So I guess we'll see how that one goes. I mean, the women's draw is very open at the minute. So is the men's. I mean, Djokovic came back from 2 sets just literally today. He was 2 sets down to a 19-year-old. And then I think the 19-year-old kind of ran out of gas, and he lost 6-love, 6-1, and then he retired 4-0 down in the 5th set. So Djokovic is doing what he's doing. Nadal won today as well. So those two are going to have an all-timer in the semi-finals, I think, because they're in the same half. So those two are going to be very interesting. Serena Williams, I'm not sure. I mean, she's obviously still up there in the top reaches of the women's game, but she's running out of tournaments to win. Certainly, obviously she's like Federer. She's obviously better on grass and hard courts, so she's not out of time. Given that she's 39, I mean 39 is really getting up there, men or women, to try and win Grand Slam tournaments at this age against some of the guys and girls that are around. Is very difficult. So that's still rumbling on. We're going to get very excited. I think next week is going to be the last 2 weeks of it. So we're really moving on. Quarterfinals, I think, now. Speaking of, so we talked about the Formula One that was kicking off late, and the tennis is kind of just about kicked off. The golf, which I wasn't actually going to cover, I kind of knew it was obviously, it's the Memorial Tournament. It's Jack Nicklaus, the great Jack Nicklaus. His tournament that he kind of created, course he designed. All the top players are playing. A lot of the top players. Brooks Koepka wasn't there. He's too busy arguing with Bryson DeChambeau on Twitter. So, look, the game was kind of ticking. The rounds were ticking along. Jon Rahm almost set the 54-hole record. So after 3 rounds, almost had the record after 3 rounds. He was 6 shots clear of Morikawa and Cantlay, absolutely destroying the golf course. And he putted, obviously missed his putt for the record. He was obviously walking off the course thinking, right, 6-shot lead, this is game over. As he walked off the course, he was told that he tested positive for COVID and he has to withdraw from the tournament. 6 shots in the lead. You've got pretty much a guaranteed win. 6 shots is right. You should not lose a 6-shot lead, especially the way he's playing. So he has to withdraw. So he was told on Monday. So I did research. He was told on Monday that he was in under the microscope of contact tracing, because he'd been in contact with someone who tested positive. He was in contact with someone for more than 15 minutes indoors. So he had to take daily tests, and if he could pass daily tests, he'd be able to comply. So this was Monday. So this is way before the tournament started. So the PGA were aware of it. Passed all his tests, passed all his tests, passed all his tests. Now, because there was a rain delay on Thursday or Friday, I think it was. So they pushed the second round onto the Saturday. So he finished his second round, went out, started his third round. That test he took in between the second and third round, they were getting the results back. So as he was playing, he failed the test. So they were aware he failed. They obviously retested it to make sure he definitely failed. And then, so they found out, he was tested positive for COVID while he was in the middle of the tournament, winning the tournament. I think I mentioned earlier in the year, I can't remember, one of these chats, somebody, I think, it was the world darts champion, Gerwyn Price, had to withdraw from the Premier League darts because he tested positive before the event. Now that's pretty big, given in the context of a world champion of a sport missing the biggest tournament. Now you've pulled a guy out of a tournament he's winning by 6 shots because he's got COVID. Now that is right up there with some of the craziest things I've seen in sport. Because I mean, whether about who he is, I mean, he's world number 2, world number 3, dominating this tournament, 6 shots clear. So everyone else, when they leave the tournament, leave the round that day, they're thinking, okay, we're playing for second tomorrow. And then obviously Rahm goes down with COVID. So now the joint second place, Patrick Cantlay and Colin Morikawa, who are 6 shots back, are now co-leaders going into the last round. So they tee off last now. So the mentality overnight just completely shifts. So now you're actually going into a tournament, you're thinking, right, okay, I've got to go and, I've got a chance to win now. So those two were battling it out. Quite poor standard. It's not a poor standard of golf, but it was, the even par. It was a tough course. They ended up going to a playoff, which Cantlay won. He's one of my favourite players. I mean, Cantlay and Morikawa were definitely 2 of my favourite players. I like how they play, demeanour, nice guys. They're not too up and down. My boy Patrick Reed's in there. He came top 5. And Scotty Scheffler, he had a chance. He had a couple of putts to try and get into that playoff. So Scotty Scheffler, a lot of my favourites were up there. And then Cantlay won late on in the day. So, some of the other guys, Spieth was in there. He was Spieth, McIlroy, and Bryson DeChambeau were all 1 under. Just didn't really contend at all. Justin Thomas was 3 over, didn't contend at all. So given that the next major tournament is the US Open, some of these guys, I mean, Spieth's kind of ticking along. He's not really, not lighting the world on fire, but he's been playing okay. He's been leading a couple of these tournaments recently. Obviously, Scheffler is playing well now. Rahm is playing very well, so he'll be out in isolation until the Tuesday before the Open, the US Open. So he will be able to play. He'll fly out there on the day, and I think he'll have 1 practice round, then be able to start golf and play. So he's asymptomatic, so he's not suffering at the minute. So he should be good to go. He should be right up there in terms of favourites, because he's going to really be fired up to try and win this tournament. So, him and Patrick Cantlay. Cantlay's not been too good. Morikawa's been okay as well. So now that they've got a bit of motivation after having played well this week, at a really good field, a good tournament, the US Open's looking a little bit more interesting than it was. Because, like I've been saying all year, no one's really taking it upon themselves to go and dominate golf at the minute. Even, world number 1s, Dustin Johnson, he's not really doing much. Brooks Koepka's come back from injury. McIlroy's nowhere. Justin Thomas is nowhere. Rahm is kind of finally now kicked into gear. Morikawa and Cantlay, I think, will get this boost for sure. And a lot of these, Spieth and McIlroy, it's just, no one's really going for it, to be fair. But US Open in a couple of weeks, so that's going to be very fun. Speaking of very fun, finally from me, UFC 263 this weekend. couple of good fights that could be really real classics. I'm hoping they're classics anyway. So Leon Edwards from Birmingham, young Brit, is going to fight Nate Diaz. You probably well know he's kind of like a cult hero, Nate Diaz. That's just going to be a welterweight fight. That's probably, if one of them looks very good, that'll be a title eliminator. So the winner might fight Kamaru Usman for the belt sometime later in the year if one of them looks really good. It's kind of on Leon Edwards to really win that because he's kind of ranked number 3. He's been ranked number 3 without having fought anyone really good. He won his last fight by eye poke. It was kind of like it was a no contest, or I think it was he won by technical. It's no contest. So he kind of like got through his last fight, his first fight in a long time. So he's has got a point to prove. A co-main event, my second favorite fighter, Davison Figueiredo, flyweight champion. So Figueiredo and Moreno, the guys fighting this weekend, they fought in December, and it was fight of the year. I think it was second behind Weili Zhang and Joanna, but that was, I mean, these two fights, so this Figueiredo Moreno fight and the Weili and Joanna fight, 2 of the top 5 that I've ever seen. I think a lot of people would probably say the same. Figueiredo Moreno, it was just wild from start to finish. So because they're smaller, 115. So they're small guys, but it's so entertaining. Like the smaller weight classes always provide the most entertainment because the cardio is normally pretty good. There's not normally as many knockouts, so you normally get some 5-rounders in there. But that is the fight. I cannot wait for that fight. If it's anything like the first one, so Figueiredo was in hospital the night before. Can't remember what he had. I think he had food poisoning the night before that fight, and he kind of overlooked Moreno a little bit. I think he cruised up 2-0, two rounds up early. I thought he lost the fight as I was scoring it. I gave it to Moreno, but it was a draw. So Figueiredo held onto his belt. But that fight is going to be classic, hopefully. Main event, Israel Adesanya, Nigerian boy. He's rematching Marvin Vettori. So they fought a while back before Adesanya was a champion. And Adesanya just got a decision over Vettori. So Vettori's won a few fights recently. He's big, very big. Adesanya's ground game got exposed in the last fight against Blachowicz at light heavyweight, to be fair, but there's kind of a big hole in his game now. And now we have a rematch. I mean, Adesanya's stock has definitely taken a hit, even though he went up for a second belt, which doesn't normally hurt your stock too much. I feel like it has. It's kind of his aura of invincibility is kind of gone a little bit. So if he destroys Vettori, then I think that'll be back. But this is definitely an upset. Both of these title fights could have Anu for sure. This is definitely one of those fight cards where we could have 2 new champions, 110%. So that's going to be very entertaining. Very, very entertaining. So this week, European Championships is starting. I'm going to do a full breakdown because it's too big to put into one video. Go through the groups, permutations, who's gonna fight, who's gonna play who in what round, how the teams are looking going in, who are the favourites and why. Yeah, I mean that's gonna be insane. It's gonna be 2 or 3 games a day for a week and a half, and then lots of exciting games afterwards, and then football might be coming home. I don't think it will, but it might be. So yeah, I will see you very soon. We're going to get loads of videos out in the next couple of weeks, especially because the European Championships is on. Appreciate watching. If you've got this far again, congrats. Like, always helps. If you've got this far, like, subscribe, tell your mates. More videos coming. Peace.